Welcome to VyCast, where we bring a blend of knowledge, expertise, and fun to the world of finance. Stay tuned for our exciting episode packed with insights and practical tips that will help you achieve your financial goals.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Charlene Shirk, and today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's making headlines all across the country, especially here in Florida. We're talking insurance. Joining us today is Tamara Naar, Senior Vice President, VyStar Insurance Agency. Tamara, thanks so much for joining us today on VyCast.
Thank you so much for having me, Charlene.
So I think maybe a lot of folks may not even know that VyStar Credit Union actually offers insurance services. So can you walk us through a little bit about the products that are offered?
Absolutely. We have a full suite of products through VyStar Insurance Agency. We offer auto, both personal lines and commercial, boat coverage, RV, golf carts. We also have home, condo renters, and flood insurance. We work with multiple trusted carriers, and we are able to do the shopping for our clients. We have a team of licensed insurance agents with over 80 years of experience, and our agents meet with our clients on an annual basis to ensure that they have the right coverage for their households. And we work with both members, VyStar Credit Union members, and non-members.
Now, you mentioned that you work, that your agents work with their customers to make sure that they have the coverage that they need.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest challenge I think most folks face when dealing with insurance policies, right? You kind of want to get this over as soon as possible. You want to get the lowest premiums you possibly can. And then you just kind of cross your fingers that you're covered for stuff that may come up. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to test our audience because, right, when do you find out something's not covered, right? When you need it. So we're going to do a little pop quiz with you, and we're going to call this Covered, Not Covered. And we're going to see if you know what's covered or not covered. So, okay, first question is, everybody's got a smartphone, right? You lose your smartphone. Covered, not covered under your homeowner's insurance policy?
It is covered under your homeowner's insurance policy. However, it may not meet the deductible requirement, so it might not make sense to do that. If you are concerned about the loss of a phone, it's best to get the coverage through your mobile carrier to ensure that that loss is covered for you.
I'm sure you were like, oh, it's covered under my homeowner's insurance, but then, yeah, but it might not be worth it. And if you're one of those people, there's just some people who always tend to lose their phone.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right. Okay, here's the next question for you. You've got damage to your rental car. I'm not even saying you did it, but you've got damage to your rental car. Is it covered under your own auto insurance policy? Covered, not covered?
It could be covered under your own auto insurance policy. You would need to decline the damage collision waiver that the rental agency offered in order for it to be covered under your policy. And you'd also need to ensure that your policy does transfer to a rental vehicle.
So first, make sure your policy actually covers it before you decline that additional coverage.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're paying for two things,
Yes.
right, that you don't even need. Okay. Is flooding, big topic here in Florida, is flooding caused by a natural disaster covered under a standard homeowner's insurance policy? Covered, not covered?
Not covered.
Not covered.
Not covered. Flood insurance is actually a separate policy from your homeowner's policy.
That is important to know here in Florida and other places as well. Okay. Final question. Your dog bites the Amazon delivery person. Is it covered under your renter's policy?
It could be covered under your renter's policy. But A, you would have to disclose to your agent that you have a dog and the breed of the dog and ensure that the policy that you have does not exclude dog bites. But again, if this is something that you're concerned about, having an additional policy called an animal liability policy would ensure that you would have coverage for that.
Because some of our little fur babies tend to be little biters.
Some of them are.
You want to get that covered. So really what I think I'm getting out of this quiz is that you had a lot of, well, it depends. And maybe there's a lot of gray area in insurance policies. And I think that's what's so important for our conversation today, right?
Yes.
To find out how to make sure that you have the kind of policy that fits your needs.
Absolutely.
And at an affordable rate. Since 2019, insurance premiums have doubled here in the state of Florida. And recently, Farmers Insurance announced it was leaving the state and no longer covering auto and home, no longer providing that kind of coverage. So, Tamara, what kind of insight can you give us as to what is going on? And goodness, what are we going to have to face in the future? I mean, we need coverage.
Yeah. Well, the reality is the market has hardened. And what I mean by that is we're seeing increased premiums. We are seeing insurance companies reducing their risk, and we're seeing them being very specific about the type of risk, that the terms of their risk. And what's contributed to that is, for about 10 years, between 2006 and 2016, Florida really did not have a major catastrophic storm. Mm-hmm. And then in 2017, we had a Category 4, which was Hurricane Irma, and that caused about $50 billion in damages. Then back to back, the next year in 2018, we had Hurricane Michael, and that storm caused about $25 billion in damages. And then just last year in Southwest Florida, we had Hurricane Ian, and right now Ian is estimated to have cost close to $112 billion in damages. So as you can imagine, all of those storms had led some insurers to become insolvent, and then other insurers to try to reduce their risk in the state. In addition to that, the state of Florida is one of the highest in the nation for homeowners litigation, and also for insurance fraud. So a combination of all those things is really what's driving those astronomical rates that are impacting all of us.
I hate to say this pun, but a perfect storm for rates to go up. So let me ask you this. A lot of folks may feel like their rates just keep going up and going up. Is this a good time to shop around to see if you can get a better rate? Or with so many carriers deciding to either just drop people or move out of the state or just shut their doors, should you just stay with who you have and just be grateful you have coverage?
I think it's important to have an insurance agent to help you navigate these times. As I shared with you, what the agent does is ensures that you have the right coverage for your household. And what the agent can also do for you is help you determine if you are receiving the discounts that may be made available to you. There's so many things that you can do to your home that could afford you certain discounts. For example, if you have a monitored alarm system, there is typically a discount for that.
All right, check. I'm doing my mental checklist, yeah.
If you live in a gated community, that could offer you some discounts. And if you live in a gated guarded community, there's an additional discount for that. The agent would also be able to have some discussions with you to see if you've made any changes each year that could potentially help you or impact your premium. So I really think it's important to have an insurance agent and meet with them on an annual basis and go through the process to see that A, you're covered correctly, and B, that you're receiving all the discounts you can get to help you with those premiums.
Because things like, the windows that you can get that are hurricane resistant.
Absolutely.
If you put on a new roof, that's the first person I'd call as my insurance agent. Yes. Because roofs are such a big deal here in Florida as well. Okay, so I do want to ask, that's homeowners insurance too, but I want to talk a little bit about renters insurance, because when I first rented, it never even occurred to me. Probably wasn't even around way back in the day. I'm not going to date myself. But then the next time I rented, I thought, I have nicer things now. I should get renter's insurance. Yeah. And then the last time I rented, it was required. Yes. There was no question about it. And to your point, if you had a dog, you've got to make sure you have everything covered. So is it just now required?
Well, we're seeing the majority of the apartment complexes requiring renters insurance, and landlords, I'm seeing about 80 to 90% of landlords making this a requirement for the lease agreement. And what happens there with renters insurance is when you have that in place, it really transfers the risk from the property owner to the tenant. And so if there is something like a kitchen fire or water damage, then that risk is transferred to the renter and not to the owner. So I do think it is important to have renter's insurance Renter's insurance also covers your personal property. So if there is a theft or damage to those properties with a loss, it's covered there. So it's beneficial for both the renter and also for the property owner to have renter's insurance.
Because you hear so often that a kitchen fire started in somebody else's kitchen,
Correct.
and then your place was damaged either through water or smoke or something to that effect. So if you're the person whose kitchen fire happened, I'm now covering the damage I did to your kitchen or your place as well, because then that could put me in a state of liability as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it. I think for the money, because it's not something that's astronomical, like we're talking about homeowners insurance.
No.
Yeah,
Definitely less than homeowners insurance. Yeah.
See, we have good news for you. All right, let's talk about flood insurance,
Okay.
because there is, I think, a lot of confusion out there, because when you were like not covered, that was the one thing you could absolutely say with certainty. So when you have a homeowner's insurance, the policy includes flood insurance. What kind of flooding does it cover? Do you need it if you don't live in a flood zone? Because flooding can come from a couple different places, right? It can come from water from outside, or flooding can come from water from inside.
Yes.
So can you clear that all up for us?
So the difference between water damage and flooding or flood insurance is going to be dependent on the cause of the loss. So when you think about water damage, that typically happens from within the home. So hypothetically, you're at home, you see there's water on the ceiling, you go upstairs, you find that there is a busted pipe, and that causes water damage in the home. That is covered under your homeowner's policy. With flooding from the outside, which is normally caused by an act of God or Mother Nature, or a river overflowing, that is not covered under your homeowner's policy. That is a separate policy called a flood policy that is usually obtained through the National Flood Insurance Program, but completely separate from your homeowner's policy. So you would need to have both, dependent on your risk exposure.
So let's talk risk exposure, right? We all know that, you know, here in Duval County, the area where we live, you can go and check and see if you are in a flood zone. In fact, there are some signs in some places in the city that say, hey, the water might get here. That means, you know, you're in a flood zone or you need to evacuate. So how do you determine that in terms of what your risk is? Because, I mean, come on, we're in Florida. Like, every place is a flood zone, right? In Florida, we're in a peninsula here.
Yeah, well, you'll find that most mortgage lenders will require you to carry flood insurance if you are in a moderate to high-risk flood area. If you're not in a moderate to high-risk flood area, it is optional. But as you've mentioned, Florida is a high-risk flood area. Think about Southwest Florida last year with Ian. There were several areas in Southwest Florida that were not coded as moderate to high-risk flood areas, but did experience flooding as a result of that storm.
Yeah.
So I would say that it's really an optional insurance product that you really want to consider having, because you just never know.
This is the expert saying, just get flood insurance. Now, when you said about risk, how can you measure your risk? Is there a place you could go to measure risk?
Sure. There is a website that's called a risk factor website that you can go out, and it will help you understand whether you're in a moderate or high risk area for things like flood, also for wildfires. So I think that's a great resource for you to utilize to assess that.
Okay, that is great information. We'll have to check that, and we'll make sure we have that information for you folks. All right, so another risk that we have here in Florida, and if you're, in the middle of the country, you may not have this. We have sinkholes here. In fact, in I believe it was Tampa, there's an area known as Sinkhole Alley. You don't want to live there. Good luck getting insurance there. So, all right, I guess we can play covered, not covered again. Like, sinkholes, are they covered?
Sinkholes may be covered.
Oh, another maybe.
It may be covered. So sinkholes are a geological phenomena where the ground collapses, and this is due to movement of subsurface materials, and it can cause structural damage. Sinkholes are usually caused naturally, or they can be caused based on human activity such as construction or excessive groundwater extraction. So if you are a homeowner or a renter in a sinkhole-prone area, you want to be sure that you have this coverage. but it is not a coverage that's standard on a homeowner's policy. It is an endorsement or an addition to the policy. So you would have to get that added to the policy in order to have sinkhole coverage. And this is made available dependent on the insurance company and also the location of the property.
All right, good to know. Check to see if you are in a sinkhole area. Why you want to live there, I don't know. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. All right, another type of insurance policy where some of it's, you've been mentioning like some things are required, some are not. You know, you add those on as an addition to your policy for extra, you know, security. Auto insurance, yes. Right? In every state, and you've got, you know, what you're required and then the extra that you can get. So let's talk a little bit about auto insurance because everybody wants to save money, right? So they're like, do you want this? Nah, I don't need that. Right. So with your expertise, talk us through a little bit about the coverage that we have to have and the coverage that we probably want to have.
Well, in the state of Florida, there are only two coverages that are required by the state, and that is $10,000 of property damage and $10,000 of personal injury protection. That's all that's required by the state of Florida. But that really doesn't protect you against third-party liability claims for bodily injuries, and it doesn't protect your property, which is your car that you've probably invested quite a bit of money in purchasing. So those are the required coverages. The coverages that you would want to include is bodily injury liability. The state only requires property damage liability. And you'd also want to include comprehensive coverage and collision coverage. So collision coverage would cover damage to your vehicle if you are in a loss. And collision is going to cover damage to the vehicle, and that's typically any act of God. So flooding.
We're back to flooding.
Yeah, a tree were to fall and hit your vehicle, that would be covered under comprehensive coverage. And then another big coverage you really want to consider having is uninsured and underinsured insurance. And the reason being is there are quite a few people that are driving around with just the state minimum. And if you were to get involved in a loss with them, they don't have the appropriate coverage to cover some of your damages. So this is, again, protecting you against people that are driving around uninsured or underinsured. The other thing about uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, it will help you for your injuries and in the event that you are unable to do your regular activities through life.
Like walk the dog, mow the yard, clean the house.
That coverage can assist you with getting help there.
So walking the dog and mowing the yard, it would help cover that?
It would pay to hire someone to assist you to do things like that. If it is something that is your regular activity and you have the uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, that coverage could afford you assistance there.
So am I hearing you correctly? If you have the state's minimum, you still are considered underinsured? Underinsured.
Because you're not carrying enough coverage for potential damages.
So I was hit in a car accident, and I ended up having spinal surgery.
Yes.
And the $10,000 coverage that you mentioned was just the deductible I had to pay for my surgery.
Yes. And if that was caused by someone else and they have the state minimum, they have no bodily injury coverage to assist with your medical bills.
Oh, yeah. And those can go on for years and years and years. Absolutely. And you're right. Your car is probably the second largest investment you've made next to your house.
Yes.
Yeah. $10,000 is barely going to fix the electronics in your car if something happens.
High-tech vehicles that we're now seeing on the road.
Okay. So, I think what's been really, really great about this conversation is, okay, here's the minimum, but the minimum isn't really going to get you if you have any kind of real damage to your home, flooding to your home period, or damage to your car, damage to you, right? So if someone wants to sit down and really let me take a good hard look at my policy and see what it is I need to have. And then I think you mentioned like about risk, how risk adverse you are or are not. Like, where do you even start with that process?
Well, again, this is where an agent comes in, a licensed professional that has experience that can help guide you through the process and help you determine what your risk exposure is. Typically, what we see is if you have a high deductible, then your premiums may be a little bit lower. But you have to be prepared to be able to pay that deductible. So if you're going to select a deductible, let's say hypothetically of $1,000, do you have that set aside in the event of a loss where you can get to it readily to be able to pay for the first $1,000 of the damages to your vehicle? So working with an agent, having the agent walk you through the process, helping you understand each line of coverage and what that means to you and how that could impact your household in the event of a loss is going to be very crucial as you think about making changes to your auto and your home insurance.
So if I have a policy with someone else, can I come to VyStar Insurance and speak with an agent and have them look at somebody else's policy and help me make that decision?
Absolutely. We do that for our members and we do that for non-members as well. Or agents will look at your policy, help you understand the coverages you have, find out what's important to you and your household, and help you determine if the policy that you have is meeting those needs. So yes, do give us a call. Visit one of our agents and we can help walk you through that process.
Well, Tamara, this has been great. Is there anything that you think that folks out there should know that we haven't covered today?
Insurance is important. And sometimes we don't recognize that until it's too late. And so take the time to meet with an agent and then have that agent help you through this process. We're here for you.
Yeah, because we've all heard those horror stories that you thought it was covered or you didn't think you needed it, and then boom, you find out you need it, and either you didn't get it or you don't have it and you thought you did.
And then it's too late.
Yeah, and then it is too late. Well, Tamara, thank you so much for joining us. Hey, if folks want to learn more, where can they go?
Sure. If they want to learn more, you can visit us at VyStar Credit Union under insurance. There's lots of information on our website, and it also has our phone number. You can reach out to us and speak with one of our agents that can help you through this process.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today on VyCast. It's been who knew that insurance could be so interesting and so fun to learn?
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So I'm super excited about this next segment of VyCast because we are talking about VyStar Foundation and the great work it's doing in the community. And we have Rosimar Melendez. Rosie works with nonprofits across the region who are interested in engaging with VyStar Foundation. Thanks so much for being here today.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, I think you have the best job here at VyStar. Okay, I'm going to give that away. So talk a little bit more, share with folks your role and what the foundation is doing in the community.
I might be biased, but I do agree. I have the best job in the foundation. I work alongside Patty McElroy, the foundation president, and the board of directors to really think through our strategy, what the funding priorities are. I manage the grant-making activities and events of the foundation, but more importantly, I work with nonprofits who want to engage or are funded by the foundation. So in summary, I give out money, and people really like that.
And they really like you.
They do.
You're like a very popular person.
I am.
And you talked about the foundation's, priorities and the things that it invests in. So talk a little bit more about what the focus of the foundation is.
Sure. So VyStar Foundation serves as a philanthropic arm for the credit union. It has been a genuine passion of our CEO, Brian Wolfberg, and the board of directors to stand up the foundation to really amplify and strengthen the giving across the communities we serve. Launching the foundation has really allowed us to not only streamline our investment, but more importantly, be intentional about addressing needs in the community in our funding priority areas, which are military, youth, and community building. So ultimately, it more profoundly allows us to impact the lives of those around us, keeping true to our commitment to do good.
Now, you mentioned military, and that was the first grant cycle. Yep. And I had the honor of being there when 10 military organizations, nonprofits, received their checks from the foundation. And that was such... it filled your heart. I mean, it was just so exciting to see these organizations and the impact they're making in the community funded by the foundation. I don't want to steal your thunder, but tell folks about that because that was such a great day.
It was such a fun event to really bring them together and really celebrate it. And it really celebrates our inaugural grant. So we honored our roots of serving the military, but really launching specifically an opportunity that allow nonprofits that serve our military, veterans, and their community to address specific needs around food insecurity and housing, mental health, and workforce development. So we were able to really look across our communities and our region to identify 10 organizations that met those specific opportunities and really work with them throughout the year to see how they impact the community and really change some of the outcomes that allow our militaries to hopefully benefit.
And I love the variety. You had a group that helps veterans go in the water and surf and paddleboard and just kind of connect with nature. And then you had another organization that was helping, we talk a lot about, going from military to civilian employment, but for veterans who want to be entrepreneurs, like you don't hear that talked about a lot, right? And this was an organization that really helped if you want to start so you really had this wide range that did hit on those specific areas, but really focused on just a variety of opportunities and needs that were out there.
Yeah, that's the exciting part. We really look at, as I mentioned, being intentional about addressing needs. And we knew these were areas that our military really needed to look at and address. So we had, as you mentioned, Service Dog from SD Gunner out in Georgia, Task Force Hydro One, who do some great water therapy for our veterans and their families. So they surf, they paddle, they do outriggers. We have transitional career changes for Operation New Uniform, veteran initiatives. So really, as you mentioned, I get the honor of working with them and really seeing how they do impact the lives of the families.
And that was close to $200,000 in funding that was provided to these organizations.
That's right. Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. And Rosie, the next grant cycle is about to open up, and that's going to focus on youth. So can you walk us through a little bit about what you're looking for in those areas?
Yeah. So we're going to open our youth grant cycle August 21st. So more information will be released soon with our notification of funding opportunity. We will be specifically looking to fund or address areas around also workforce development and experiences that learn to career pathways, addressing food insecurity and housing as well. I think it's an area that really transcends across all of our communities, and creative learning opportunities for our youth as well.
That's exciting. Okay, so sometimes applying for a grant can be difficult, right? It can be challenging. So how do you help walk folks through this process to make it easy and accessible?
So we host a series of information sessions so that the nonprofits feel comfortable in making sure that they do align. We don't want them to put in a lot of work and then it not be something that we're interested in. So we're very open in communicating about what it is that we're looking. There is so much information on our website about our eligibility criteria, the information sessions where they can come ask questions, how do they engage with us, and then we really just do some one-on-ones if they have additional questions. So again, we want to make sure that there's alignment, that they're clear on what the expectations are. We want to be great stewards, right? Fiduciary responsibility that we have to ensure that our nonprofits can also manage and provide the work.
Well, Rosie, where do they find that information?
It's all on our website at VyStarFoundation.org. As mentioned, the notification of funding opportunity will be there. There are links to our application, which is online. There's ways to register for our upcoming information sessions and a lot more, just to learn everything about the foundation. And lots of really cool stories that we're launching all of the time.
Yeah, there's a great profile on SD Gunner, the organization with the service dogs. There's a great story on there, a profile story on them and the impact that they're making with the funds that they were given. Well, Rosie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much for what you're doing with VyStar Foundation. That's really doing such great work.
So much fun. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us in today's episode of VyCast. And for more information about the VyStar Insurance Agency or VyStar Foundation or any of your financial needs, you can always head over to VyStarCU.org. Thanks so much for joining us today. And of course, don't let me forget, subscribe to our VyCast podcast or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And we're on all our VyStar social media platforms. And if you've got an idea or a topic you'd like to share, please reach out to us on there and let us know what you'd like to talk about. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.